Why does Rick Reider care about robots?
Because they're cool, Eric.
I know they're cool,
And that's what everyone cares about.
They are cool, and I think they're changing the world. And it's probably a euphemism for technology. I think we're going through an extraordinary period of that doesn't get nearly enough commentary about the productivity. People talk about in the 90s, the internet revolution. I actually think the manifestation of the internet, data transmission, logistics, robotics, is actually playing out right now. Part of why I think employment is going to grow much slower than the economy is going to grow is because you're creating this incredible movement towards companies becoming more productive using technology. Just to give you a good example, since 2000, we think 35 million jobs have been lost or have been gained through technology, through productivity, i.e. there are 145 million jobs in this country, 35 million have gone away because of productivity, depending on how you measure it. We're watching something, and part of why inflation stays low, part of why there's no wage pressure, part of why I think education is such a big deal in this country, because those lower level, if you think about what companies like Foxconn has announced, or BMW, or some of the fast food restaurants, the replacement of humans for technology is something that's happening so quickly.
But hold on, so the jobs go away, but then in turn, do these companies make more money?
So if you track profit margins, and I've spent an incredible amount of time on this, you track profit margins over the last 10 years, and you actually take the benefit you've gotten from labor or the reduction in labor, you'll see that a tremendous, debt, the cost of your debt has helped for sure, and there have been other enhancements in terms of reducing costs. But truly productivity and largely labor, because it used to be, there's an incredible set of data where you can look at where you see where companies' profits increase and then hiring increases right on top of it. And this cycle doesn't happen. The profits increase and you don't see that transmission mechanism in the hiring because you can replace it through technological innovation. And I've done reports where I've shown, and by the way, I don't think it's, for the fixed income guy, why is it so interesting? Huge ramifications for unemployment and inflation, which are the two Fed mandates. And I think we're going through an incredible, which by the way, I think will influence Fed over the next, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
Walk us through those implications for unemployment on the one hand and inflation on the other.
So I think the economy is going to grow faster than people think. I think there is a series of little things that are happening that are creating a more buoyant, which I think has become to some extent consensus now. I think you're seeing a bit of capex increase, you're seeing a bit of fiscal drag going away, you're seeing a bit of consumption increase, the lending mechanism, the housing mechanism. There's a lot of little things versus where you were 3 years ago that are contributing to a bit of velocity across the economy that I think could lead to well above the 3% growth rate. So you have that dynamic. So growth is picking up. That being said, employment is clearly improving. However, it's improving a lot slower. When you take participation rate adjusted
unemployment, there you go.
Unemployment's improving much slower. So the Fed is in this really, I'll get into inflation, the Fed's in this really tough conundrum, I think, and Janet Yellen, I think, will be this tough conundrum. And part of why I think volatility in the curve comes in is you think about over the next 1 year, 2 years, growth picks up, their mandate is full employment. Growth picks up, employment doesn't continue alongside of it. How do you adjust policy relative to that? It's part of why I think you'll see volatility in sort of the 3 to 5 year part of the curve going forward.
But won't the lack of employment or the lack of job creation to match the pace of economic growth help to tamp down inflation because people won't be earning, there won't be people earning money, the ones who don't have jobs? I think you hit the key point. And one man's opinion, I think when we hear Janet Yellen talk more about what her initiatives are going to be, you have a couple of constraining factors on inflation, wage pressure being the big one, energy and technology productivity being the others. That inflation, upside inflation risk is not a big deal. I think what Janet Yellen is going to talk more and more about, because employment has these structural issues, tremendous structural issues, it's hard to move the unemployment needle. I think she's going to talk more about lower bounds on inflation or hitting the long-run expectations on inflation because she's not worried about the upside today. I think it's a really big deal. I think it's going to be a hallmark of the new Janet Yellen chairmanship as we get into the next few months. It'll be interesting to hear.
What do we do about all of these unemployed people who are no longer looking for jobs? If we're facing this boom in productivity and technology, if I'm somebody who hasn't had a job for 18 months, 2.5 years, can I ever get one?
So we can talk for a long time. I think there are things that have to be done that are fiscally driven, including small business lending programs.
Things that Janet Yellen can't fix.
Correct. And there's small business lending programs that have a real velocity to them that can be initiated because most of the hiring, the net hiring in this country is new businesses, small businesses, things like cash trapped overseas if it's spent on capex or hiring people. And then the big one is education, training, research and development initiatives that have to come from the fiscal engine. If you create that, and I'm a big believer in education, you have to retrain and improve our education system in this country so that the jobs that are going away, those
factory workers who don't have a factory anymore.
Yeah, and by the way, one of the big things, including ADP today, that I think is interesting, is part of why the Fed has to be so concerned about housing and real estate, is you got to make sure construction continues, because that was such a big driver in the last decade. If housing doesn't stay where it is, then construction is going to be a big part of it. But it's got to be education, training, make sure real estate keeps improving, both commercial as well as residential. But those are all things that have to happen. It's not, we don't need more QE to get people hired. It just doesn't, there's no transmission mechanism there.